Hello dear students, welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Rimalpreet Kaur, Assistant Professor, Khalsa College of Education, Ranjit Avenue, Amritsar. Today, we are going to discuss about decentralized and participatory school governance. After studying this topic, you will be able to know the meaning of decentralization, realize the importance of decentralization, differentiate between various types of decentralization, understand the meaning of school governance, decentralized school governance and participatory school governance, explain the role of decentralized and participatory school governance. First of all, let's discuss what is decentralization. Decentralization means diffusion of authority, the dispersal of authority of decision making to the lower level management is termed as decentralization. Decentralization pattern is wider in scope and the authorities are diffused to the lowest most level of management. Now, let's discuss some of the definitions. According to Fayol, everything that goes to increase the importance of the subordinate's role is called decentralization. According to another scholar, Allen, decentralization refers to the systematic effort to delegate to the lowest level of authority except that which can be controlled and exercised at central points, where delegation of authority is complete process and it takes place from one person to another, while decentralization is complete only when fullest possible delegation has taken place. For example, the general manager of a company is responsible for receiving the leave application for the whole of the concern. The general manager delegates this work to the personnel manager, who is now responsible for receiving the leave applicants. In this situation, delegation of authority has taken place. On the other hand, on request of personnel manager, if the general manager delegates this power to all the departmental heads at all levels, in this situation, decentralization has taken place. Subordinates' responsibility increase in this case, whereas in delegation, the managers remain answerable even for the act of subordinates to their superiors. That is why we said that everything that increases the role of subordinates is decentralization. Peter Kropotkin, a Russian anarchist intellectual, defined decentralization as the true measure of progress. He said that we should be working towards decentralizing all aspects of life where a society is without hierarchy, where all relationships are based on free association of equals. That is a profound challenge and may be never-ending one. Moreover, our opinions may not always align on how to best achieve this goal. Yet, it is a goal worth striving for. In short, we can say that in decentralization, the subordinates get a chance to decide and act independently, which develops skills and capabilities. This way, the organization is able to process reserve of talents in it. Here, diversification of activities can take place effectively since there is more scope for creating new departments. In decentralization structure, operations can be coordinated at divisional level, which is not possible in the centralization setup. In the case of decentralization structure, there is greater motivation and morale of the employees since they get more independence to act and decide. In this structure, coordination to some extent is difficult to maintain as there are many department divisions and authority is delegated to maximum possible extent, that is, to the bottommost level delegation reaches. Now, you must be thinking why decentralization is important or what is the need of it. So, its foremost role is to develop initiative and creativity among subordinates. Passing of authority at middle and lower level shows the trust and faith of top level in their subordinates, and this trust and faith motivate the employees working at different level as they are allowed to take decisions without seeking the approval of superiors. Secondly, it also develops managerial talent for future. In the decentralization, managers working at lower and middle level also learn the art of making decisions. They get the experience of performing activities of top executives and learn to manage the authority given to them. So, whenever there is a vacant job position at top level management, the managers working at lower or middle level can be promoted. This is how it levels a talent for future. Next is it develops quick decision making. In the decentralization process, decision making is not restricted in few hands only, but decision making power is entrusted to all the managers who are taking actions or performing the activities. This leads to faster decision because employees who have to perform the activities are allowed to take decisions also. Another is it gives a relief to top level management. In the process of decentralization, top level managers are not overburdened with the responsibilities and authority as they systematically pass the authority and responsibility at different levels, and they become free to concentrate on core and important issues. Other than this, it facilitates growth. Decentralization grants more autonomy or freedom to lower level. This helps the subordinates to do the work in the manner best suited for their department. When each department is doing to their best, then productivity increases and it will generate more revenue which can be used for expansion. Next is it ensures better control. In decentralization, employees working at different levels take their own decisions and they are personally accountable for their decisions. They cannot pass the blame to their superiors. With decentralization, better control can be exercised through scorecard, management information system, etc. It also improves teamwork. In decentralization, all the managers and employees are sharing the decision-making powers. All are given some kind of autonomy and freedom of action. This sharing of decision and freedom of action integrate the employees as one team and develop team spirit among the employees. So these were its major advantages. If we talk about our constitution, the constitution of our country embraced in 1950 made this obvious by directing all states to create local self-government bodies under the framework of Panchayati Raj through an electoral process. However, the spirit of this directive were by and large ignored for the next 4 decades up to early 19th. The decentralization of education governance finds mention in many an education documents. Education commissions such as Kothari Commission reiterated national commitment to it, while the various national curriculum framework documents since the 70s implied decentralization in terms of creating space for local knowledge and experience to be weaved into the curriculum. The National Policy on Education of 1986 was a significant development in the education landscape of the country. It articulated grassroots level involvement through microplanning. The first significant response to the constitutional directive came sometime during the late 80s in the form of the 64th Constitutional Amendment Bill, which was finally adopted in 1992 as the 73rd and 74th Amendments. A clearer articulation of the link between education and decentralization had to wait till these constitutional amendments, which provide a mandate for the control and governance of education by the elected panchayat bodies. The delineation of specific powers and responsibilities to be transferred from the state to the local bodies is featured in these amendments. Article 243G of the 11th schedule, for instance, provides that the state and union territories may, by law, endow the panchayat with such powers and authority as may be necessary to enable them to function as institutions of self-government and to prepare plans for economic development and social justice. Now, let's discuss its various types. Types of decentralization include political, administrative, fiscal, and market decentralization. Drawing distinction between these various concepts is useful for highlighting the many dimensions to successful decentralization and the need for coordination among them. Nevertheless, there is clear overlap in defining any of these terms, and the precise definitions are not as important as the need for a comprehensive approach. Political, administrative, fiscal, and market decentralization can also appear in different forms and combinations across countries, and even within sectors. So, first is political decentralization. Political decentralization aims to give citizens or their elected representatives more power in public decision making. It is often associated with pluralistic politics and representative government, but it can also support democratization by giving citizens or their representatives more influence in the formulation and implementation of policies. Advocates of political decentralization assume that decisions made with greater participation will be better informed and more relevant to diverse interests in society than those made only by national political authorities. Then is administrative decentralization. Administrative decentralization seeks to redistribute authority, responsibility, and financial resources for providing public services among different levels of government. It is the transfer of responsibility for the planning, financing, and management of certain public functions from the central government and its agencies to field units of government agencies, subordinate units or level of government, semi-autonomous public authorities or corporations, or area-wide regional or functional authorities. The three major forms of administrative decentralization are deconcentration, delegation, and devolution. Each have different characteristics, where deconcentration, which is often considered to be the weakest form of decentralization and is used most frequently in unitary states, redistribute decision-making authority and financial and management responsibilities among different levels of the central government. It can merely shift responsibilities from central government officials in the capital city to those working in regional, provinces, or districts, or it can create strong field administration or local administrative capacity under the supervision of central government ministries. Other is delegation. It is a more extensive form of decentralization. Through delegation, central governments transfer responsibilities for decision making and administration of public functions to semi-autonomous organizations not wholly controlled by the central government, but ultimately accountable to it. Governments delegate responsibilities when they create public enterprises or corporations, housing authorities, transportation authorities, special service districts, semi-autonomous school districts, regional development corporations, or specific project implementation units. The third type of administrative decentralization is devolution. When governments devolve functions, they transfer authorities for decision making, finance, management to quasi-autonomous units of local government with corporate status. Devolution usually transfers responsibilities for services to municipalities that elect their own mayors and councils, raise their own revenues, and have independent authority to make investment decisions. Third main type is fiscal decentralization. Financial responsibility is a core component of decentralization. If local governments and private organizations are to carry out decentralized functions effectively, they must have an adequate level of revenues, either raised locally or transferred from the central government, as well as authority to make decisions about expenditures. Fiscal decentralization can take many forms, including self-financing or cost recovery through user charges, co-financing or co-production arrangement through which the users participate in providing services and infrastructure through monetary or labor contributions, expansion of local revenues through property or sales taxes or indirect charges, intergovernmental transfers that shift general revenues from taxes collected by the central government to local governments for general or specific uses, and authorization of municipal borrowing and mobilization of either national or local government resources through loan guarantees. Fourth type is economic or market decentralization. The most complete form of decentralization from a government's perspective are privatization and deregulation, because they shift responsibility for functions from the public to private sector. Privatization and deregulation are usually, but not always, accompanied by economic liberalization and market development policies. They allow functions that had been primarily or exclusively the responsibility of government to be carried out by businesses, community groups, cooperatives, private voluntary associations, and other non-government organizations. Here, privatization means leaving the provision of goods and services entirely to the free operation of the market to public-private partnerships in which government and the private sector cooperate to provide services of infrastructure, whereas the word deregulation means reducing the legal constraints on private participation in service provision or allows competition among private suppliers for services that in the past had been provided by the government or by regulated monopolies. Now come to school governance. A school governance is a government for the school. It includes all principles, models, and practices that enable a school district board to effectively direct the working of the schools within its boundaries. Most of its members are elected. The law says that every public school must have an elected governing body which meets at least once every school term. School governing bodies are responsible for school governance. Decentralized school governance means giving power to communities instead of having all the power to run schools being held by the national government. It includes parents or guardians of learners at the school. Parents should form the majority of the school governing body. Teachers or educators at the school, members of staff who are not teachers, for example, administrative staff or caretakers, learners in grade 8th or higher who are elected members of the representative council of learners. Now coming to participatory school governance, we mean active, collaborative organization and continued involvement of all these members of community in setting goals, pooling resources together and taking actions which aims at improving functioning of school and education standards. Practicing participatory school governance has been long acknowledged as an essential ingredient in the quest for better schools. Now let's understand the role of decentralized and participatory school governance. Extensive literature research has resulted in identifying the many rationales that explain the importance of community participation in education. Very first is maximizing limited resources. Most governments all over the world have been committed to delivering education for their children, particularly after the World Conference on Education for All, assembled in Vidya-mitra, Thailand in 1990. An increasing number of countries have attempted to reach the goal of providing education for all. However, governments have found themselves incompetent to do so because of lack of resources and capacities. Learning materials as well as human resources are limited everywhere, particularly in developing countries. The focus has shifted to finding efficient and effective ways to utilize existing limited resources involving parents, families, and communities in the process of research and data collection can reveal to them factors that contribute to lower enrollment and attendance and poor academic performance in their schools. Furthermore, parents are usually concerned about their children's education and often are willing to provide assistance that can improve the educational delivery. In places where teacher absenteeism and poor performance are critical issues, parents can be part of the system of monitoring and supervising teachers, ensuring that teachers arrive at classrooms on time and perform effectively in the classrooms. The absence of government support leaves the school infrastructure, equipment, and pupil supplies to the parents and the community. As a result, the community and parents are in the center in keeping the school going. Next main function is developing relevant curriculum and learning materials. Participatory governance helps achieve curriculum and learning materials that reflects children's everyday lives in society. When children use textbooks and other materials that illustrate their own lives in their community, they can easily associate what they are learning with what they have already known. Another is identifying and addressing problems. Communities can help identify and address factors that contribute to educational problems such as low participation and poor academic performance. Still, another is promoting girls' education. Community participation can contribute in promoting girls' education. Through participating in school activities and frequently communicating with the teachers, parents and communities can learn that girls' education contributes to the improvement of various aspects of their lives such as increased economic productivity, improved family health and nutrition, reduced fertility rates and reduced child mortality rates. Involving parents and communities in discussions as a part of school activities also helps to identify factors that prevent girls from schooling. Parents are encouraged to express their concern and reasons why they are not sending their daughters to school. For instance, many parents in rural areas are reluctant to send their daughters to schools located in distance, concerned about the security of their daughters on the way to and from the school. In addition, since girls are important laborers in the household, helping their mothers to do chores and take care of their young siblings, the time that requires going to and from school seems too much to waste for the parents. These issues are serious obstacles and have to be addressed and overcome in order to promote a girl's education. Involving parents and communities in school activities also help to identify possible teachers in the community, especially local female teachers, which greatly help a girl education. Furthermore, in places where communities are indifferent in girls' education, elderly people or religious leaders who are respected by community members can convince them to send their girls to schools, if the dialogue with these respected people takes place successfully. Another is creating and nourishing community school partnerships. There are various ways to bring parents and community members closer to schools, including minimizing discontinuities between schools and communities and between schools and families, minimizing conflicts between schools and communities, schools and families, teachers and parents, and what is taught in school and what is taught at home. Making easy transition of pupil going from home to school, preparing pupils to engage in learning experience, and minimizing cultural shock of new entrants to schooling. Communities can contribute to schools by sending respected community members such as religious leaders or tribe heads to the classrooms and talk about community history, traditions, customs, cultures which have been historically celebrated in the community. Schools themselves can contribute to community efforts by developing sustainable solutions to local problems. Next is realizing democracy. Where schools are perceived as authoritarian institutions, parents and community members do not feel welcome to participate in their child's education. They are not capable of taking any responsibility in school issues and tend to feel that education is something that should be taken care of by educational professionals at schools. Many people, especially minority groups in many developing countries, develop this kind of negative attitudes towards schools because they are not treated by teachers with respect. For instance, those who do not speak the country's official language and embrace other than mainstream traditions and culture feel discouraged in classrooms where teachers don't show respect to their linguistic and cultural diversity. In the history, there were times when children were prohibited from speaking their first language in schools and they got severe punishment when they broke the rule imposed by the school or the government. This educational environment is unfavorable to parents and children and therefore contributes to these students' low participation, poor academic performance, and high repeat and dropout rates. Involving communities in schools is a way of reaching democracy through identifying and addressing inequalities embedded in institutions and society as a whole. In addition, it is a strategy to create an environment in which parents feel comfortable participating in schools. Still, another function is increasing accountability. Parental involvement in education, particularly in school governance, is seen as a means of making schools more accountable to the society which funds them. This has been witnessed in some places such as England and Wales, Canada and United States. The notion of parental involvement for accountability derives from a more market-oriented concept in which school-family partnerships are viewed rather like business partnership through which the two parties receive mutual and complementary benefits which enable them to operate more effectively. Next role is ensuring sustainability. One of the major factors to ensure sustainability of programs is the availability of funds, whether from governments, private institutions or donor organizations. In this regard, community participation in education cannot ensure the sustainability of schools by itself, since communities oftentimes have to rely on external funding to keep the program sustained. However, involving community is a way to ensure that the benefits brought by a development program will be maintained after the external interventions are stopped. Another role is improving home environment. Furthermore, families who are involved in schools not only have better understanding about education but also become more willing to cooperate with the schools in attempts to improve child's learning. In addition, parents can help their children with homework and make sure that children are physically ready to learn at schools. So, to conclude, we can say that decentralized and participatory school governance can solve varied problems of our school education system if implemented properly, though there are many factors which affect the effectiveness of such governance like high cost involved, ignoring specialization, unequal distribution of work, etc. Managing and overcoming these factors efficiently will definitely result in higher grades, students attend school more regularly, stay in school longer and enroll in higher level programs. Thank you.